All right, let's get started. So welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for our monthly webinar. And I'm Marlisa Post with Donor Database Experts. Our topic today is migration or optimization, what every advancement team should consider before changing CRMs. And we have a wonderful panel with us today. So we have actually two returning panelists, so we did not scare them. That is so exciting to me. So I'm very pleased to welcome back Nicole Duncan as the Director of Advancement for the Sisters of St. Francis of Assisi. Nicole brings over 20 years experience in advancement operations and annual giving. She has led database conversions for healthcare and higher education fundraising in the past, and most recently combined three legacy systems, terrifying, into one current Razor's Edge environment. Nicole runs a small shop with a large direct mail program and is responsible for all aspects of fundraising for the healthcare and retirement needs of the remaining sisters in the order. So welcome, Nicole. Thank you for being here.
Thanks. Thanks for having me. Great to be back.
And we have Denise Verhage. Denise is the Foundation Database Coordinator for the Center for Philanthropic Excellence at Unity Point Health, where she has supported philanthropy for over 12 years. She co-led the migration of 12 foundation databases into one central system, also terrifying, and now focuses on optimizing data to improve accuracy, efficiency, and donor stewardship across the organization. So welcome, Denise. Thank you for coming back.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
And then we have Steph Williams, who is one of my teammates at Donor Database Experts. And Steph is a consultant in data and systems at Donor Database Experts, where she combines her expertise and enthusiasm to elevate nonprofit fundraising operations. A true data enthusiast, she excels at leveraging information to enhance organizational efficiencies and mission impact. Steph's achievements include launching a successful Grateful Patient program and designing a multi-stream annual direct mail campaign. She has experience with fundraising tools including Blackbaud Razor's Edge, Omatic products, Luminate Online, Classy, and other online donation platforms. So, Steph, thank you for being here.
Thanks. I like the data enthusiast as a nice way to say just a nerd, which, is our entire team. So
I'm proud of it, quite frankly.
absolutely.
So, as you heard with both of our guest panelists, both have a lot of experience with bringing together disparate systems, and so obviously have a lot to say around migration and optimization. So, first of all, Denise, can you just describe your organization for people who are attending? What's the mission, the size of your department?
Absolutely. So Unity Point Health's mission is to improve the health of the people and communities we serve. And our foundations contribute to that mission on a daily basis. So we have 12 foundations across Iowa, Illinois, and Wisconsin, and the total philanthropy team consists of roughly 75 individuals in various roles. So my role is part of the systems CPE team, which takes care of the like back office functions of philanthropy, gift receiving, reporting, database maintenance, and other duties as assigned kind of thing. So that's about the gist of it.
Great. And we heard that you combined, or your organization brought together 12 different databases and combined it into one, Razor's
We
Edge.
did. Mhm.
Roughly, just very rough estimate, how many constituents did you end up with in the final database?
We, after we brought them all in, we were still under that 400,000 mark, so probably about 350,000 individuals.
Great. All right. And Nicole, can you share a little bit about your mission, size of the department? You said it was a small department. A little bit about your organization.
Yeah, the Sisters of St. Francis of Assisi have been around for over 175 years. They started some hospitals, some school systems, and their mission is to continue living that gospel and promoting the teachings of St. Francis. Here in our advancement office, there's a team of five of us, and As you mentioned, we have a huge direct mail program. So primarily the three previous systems were um, helping that direct mail program survive. And we needed to combine approximately 1.2 million records that we had in those three systems. And now there was a lot of duplication and a lot of garbage going on in there. So happy to say that today we are down under that 400,000 record mark as well.
Oh, wow.
That's
Mhm.
amazing.
And when you say robust direct mail program, I think you're underselling it. Can you share a little bit of the metrics about, let's just say in a week or a month, your choice, like what kind of volume are we talking about?
Sure. In peak periods, high volume months, surrounding Christmas and Easter, we're processing about 1,000 gifts a week, and acknowledging those as well. So th those are the high traffic periods. But overall, we process about 60 to 70,000 gifts per year.
It's
Mhm.
amazing. Yeah, I have to say, both of you with the migrations and combinations that you guys did, we speak of your organizations in hushed, reverent tones because it's just so impressive. So we're talking today about migration and optimization. And thinking about, first of all, a should we or shouldn't we idea with migration. So before you approach either of those things, you need to really give the database a thorough cleaning. And you may at the end of that realize you don't need to migrate, you just really need to get everything organized. Can you both talk a little bit, and Nicole, I'll start with you, about your experience when you went into this project and needed to obviously organize and just figure out what was in these different systems and how to bring it together? Was there anything that surprised you in the data when you were looking at those?
Yes, with this organization, again, there was a lot of direct mail related segmentation codes, different uh, types of appeals and packages that weren't really set up that cleanly as appeals and packages. Um, there was, again, the focus on direct mail. So, what was missing for this organization was kind of the full fundraising picture that you can accomplish in a complete CRM. So outside of direct mail, we needed more of the moves management, more of the major giving structure. We also have planned gifts here, so we needed the planned giving structure as well. So those were things that were missing in our old systems that we weren't able to do until we went through the migration.
Great. And Denise, so same question. Obviously, you had 12 systems that you guys were looking at.
Right.
Were there any surprises, things that just kind of made your heart drop, anything like that?
Well, surprises, not, I mean, maybe along the way as we were migrating, we found a few things, but initially, I mean, really what we found was uncoordinated, unorganized, inconsistent data within each market and across the 12. So it was, coming together and finding, you know, discussions on how are we going to make all these processes work in this one database, and how do we make it work for 12 but also and ultimately work for one so that we are all using the data consistently. So
And Steph, not just limited to our wonderful panelists here, but just across your experience when you've gone into the process with either clients or in your own past experience of either a big cleanup or a migration, what's your best surprise that you've ever come across in a
Oh
database?
man. Um, I think in a way, I think I've run out of ways to be surprised. And I think it's interesting. So I think one of the things that we do here, at DDX2 is we do like full assessments for clients when they come on board. And usually it's prompted by this conversation of our system isn't working. What do we do? And we need to switch to a different CRM. And sometimes it's let's take a look at what's actually going on right now and can kind of the basis of this entire webinar is can we fix what you already have? Because you already know where the issues are in it. And so I think as we dig into that, sometimes what we'll see is when we look in the data and have the conversations with people on the team, it's very quickly where they're kind of misaligned. And so, I think for me, a lot of it is data in places I didn't had never thought of putting it, so sometimes it's, I want to say, some, notes or things like that, but the one that always gets me is it's just like recognition names for places. We have found it in attributes, custom fields, that's fine. In addresses and salutations, we have found it in like gift attributes. We have found it in actions, in notes, kind of all over the place. And so, no, not nothing super surprising anymore. But I think that's, it's when you really kind of start to dig down to it, and the data often will like tell you a story. You can see sometimes exactly when maybe leadership changed or something new was introduced at the organization because it was all in one place, and then all of a sudden it shifts and it's all different again. So I think it's just, maybe you think you've found all the data, and then you go digging a bit more, and oh, there's solicit codes hiding somewhere totally random too. So yeah, I think for us it's just the one that is probably the most consistently inconsistent, I would say, is probably addresses and salutations though. And typically one of the most frustrating because it's very obviously donor facing. So that's one that we like to attack first, oftentimes.
Absolutely. And so, Steph, my follow-up question to that, because with both Denise and Nicole, we have systems where they were bringing them together into one database. But can you talk a little bit about what you feel is maybe the tipping point or the reason where a client might want to think about, okay, either the database is just, we need to kill it with fire, or this system isn't working and they actually do need a different CRM. Can you talk about what things would tell you that cleanup isn't what's going to work here?
That was for me, right?
Yes, sorry.
That's like I thought. And then you were talking to I think it's the biggest ones are if there's like serious functionality missing. When we see it a lot is when an organization has maybe outgrown their original CRM. Or they have a very specific use case that isn't going to work in their existing CRM. Sometimes that's, maybe it is, a very heavy, peer-to-peer program, and maybe they just need an add-on, to their existing CRM. I'm going to default to Razor's Edge because that's what most of our clients are. But also, that can be true with other systems too. Or I think the other piece of it is when we see it a lot is they've outgrown it. So, all of a sudden you're in one place and now you need a much bigger capability to do something, or maybe you didn't have a, large major gifts program when, 10 years ago when we started with a certain software, and now you really need that portfolio management pipeline piece of it. I think Nicole mentioned too, like the plan giving module. That's, a piece that is handled very differently in different software, and can be kind of a make or break for different organizations too. So I think it's, if it's just a reporting structure thing and we can't get the numbers out the way we want, I would rather try to figure out how to clean up the existing data and the structure. If it's, we can't do this huge functionality piece in our current software, then that's, kind of when you start talking through what are the other options out there. We've also seen it the opposite way. Maybe someone buys into a program and they're just not using a lot of the functionality. They don't have the capability. They don't need it. They don't have someone on staff to manage it. And so maybe it's time to actually kind of downgrade to a less robust software too. So we've seen it both ways.
Great. We have a question before we move on. Denise, do you have a sense of what your record counts were before, so across the 12, before you brought it together?
I don't. I mean, I would say the majority of our records probably came from our biggest market. So they probably had about 300,000, and we're close enough geographically that there were so many duplicates that I
Yeah.
think that we might have had before the duplicates were brought down through the conversion itself, probably maybe 450. So it didn't go down by much with that. So because we did have a lot of overlap.
Mhm.
Yeah, and mine went down considerably because, for one, duplicates, and then also we had historical givers that were more than 10 years old. They had not made a gift in greater than 10 years. And so I had to make the decision how to handle those because it was eating up a lot of record count for us as well. So with DDX's assistance, we demoted, downgraded, took these records out of our active Razor's Edge database, parked them in our third-party Omatic list management tool because I didn't want to lose that data. That's an important, consideration because I already have revived people out of there that have come back and made a gift, surprisingly, more than 10 years later, or left us an estate gift. So I knew that I needed to hold on to that, but I didn't want it taking up real estate in our active database.
Right. And so Nicole, around that, just exactly that type of thing, deciding that, okay, for someone who hasn't given in 10 years, we're going to move them into, Omatic list management, or what were some of the discussions that you guys as a team had to, what were some of the things maybe you had to grapple with, or maybe, I don't want to say fight through, but, what were the tough discussions that you had to have before going into this process?
Yeah, definitely. Most of the tough decisions hinge around that direct mail program and how we're going to continue to manage and handle all of those data pieces because we have there's a big portion of the direct mail program is acquisition, so continually adding new names as well. So, having to think through that scope of how many years it's going to take to us to, reach those additional record band levels, what that looks like for our budget. Um, Certainly, like I said, the data points, the information that we wanted to make sure that we could always come back to and get at if we needed it. Um, I think, certainly it helped probably our gift processors, having less to actually clean up because those records are kind of parked again on the side. So I think there was a lot there's continuous conversation about the record management, the acquisition lists, how we're bringing on those new people once they come in and continuing to give them that whole donor journey as new donors. So it's continuous conversation. They weren't just
I
in the
think
past; they're ongoing.
I think it's a
I
good point
just,
too, because I think that, in full transparency, I think when people start to get their renewals, and again, we'll default to Blackbaud for right now because that's when a lot of our clients are on. But any system, as costs go up, the first thought is this is so expensive, we need to find a different CRM. Or can't we just delete half the people in our database so that we can save money? Right. And so I think that's a great conversation to have too, is it's one, where is your data at right now? Are there a lot of duplicates that we can clean up? Now, you're probably not going to clean up half of your database and duplicates. Um, but you never know. But that's part of that conversation. And then also, okay, do we have good data on people? Some of the things we've seen is, I will say this personally, an org that I worked at before this, they would every month when the Chamber of Commerce list came out, they just automatically added every business in just in case. So in some cases, maybe there is data looking at like it's not actually good data. It's outdated. We've never done anything with it. And getting rid of some of that, does that make your system work better too? But also, if you decide to migrate, do we want to continue bringing all that old garbage into the new system? Or what do we need to do? Whether it's cleaning up and staying in what we're in or moving to something new, when do you clean up that old garbage so that the same problems don't just follow you into the new software too? So I think that's a great point.
absolutely. I also think I heard the audible size of the entire longing size of the entire audience when they heard we get a lot of acquisition. I think everyone longs to have that problem. So that's actually wonderful. Denise, so same question. Now you were kind of having 12, I'll say, entities come together into one database. So I feel like there was probably a lot of discussion and tough decisions that had to be made and compromises. What did all of that look like?
Well, honestly, the prior to our conversion of all the databases into one, we made the decision not to do the cleanup prior,
Mhm.
which, you know, in hindsight, we wish sometimes we wish we could go back and have done it. But we ended up doing all of our like data optimization after the fact and tackled it, once we had all of the databases into that one. Um, we have done quite a bit of work since that time, and like Nicole, we use list management. We did record reduction after the conversion. We've done a lot with duplicates, things like that. So yeah, I think that the discussions around that, going into it were mostly around, how are we using the data in each market and just making sure that we could use the new database in that same way. So it was more, making sure we had the same code table values or, things like that so that we could accommodate the processes that were happening currently in the new database right away.
Great. Steph, I'm going to ask for your expertise here. So we've heard both Denise and Nicole mention list management, which is a nomadic product. Can you talk a little bit about what that is, why people might want to use it, and what some alternatives might be?
Yeah, you know that I love a good nomadic product.
I
So,
do.
and we are not associated with them other
Nope.
than I have used them on my own before this job and have used them on behalf of clients here. Omatic specifically, the list management piece is basically kind of like a separate database that sits, I don't know what you're gonna say, on top of next to Razor's Edge, and it's nice. It works as basically kind of like a secondary kind of holding cell, like a holding tank for donors. I think a lot of places use that to store like their acquisition lists. And so once they make a gift or have an assigned solicitor, I think are the two pieces, then they have to move into a full record. But you can kind of search it on top of your other Razor's Edge too. So I think like Nicole, I think you guys use it maybe if they hadn't had giving in, 10 years. Let's keep their action history, their appeal history, everything else, and just demote them down and kind of make a note of what their giving history was. But then if they come back later, we can pull them back up. And so it works well, I think, especially when you're in a situation where you've got a lot of records you don't want to lose, but you don't have actual giving history on them either, and you don't need them to kind of clutter up.
When I was in
I
higher ed, they also used it for parent records
I was
because
gonna say for
sometimes,
parents, for
yeah.
alumni, things like that. The last one of the last nonprofits I was at before this, that's where we put all of our patient lists until they gave or responded to a mailing too. So our like grateful patient acquisition list lived in there too. So it's great for that. I transparently don't know any alternatives to it that would live with Razor's Edge. Um, so I guess I don't really have an answer for that one, but I guess the alternative is you leave them all in a spreadsheet, and that has a whole different set of questions and concerns. So, but yeah, that's kind of I think how you run it. Otherwise, if you've got a huge acquisition list, it's that or they take up space on your record count in whatever CRM you're using. So.
Great. Denise, with bringing together again, and I'm going to keep saying it because it's amazing, these 12 databases. Um, was it hard to convince leadership that this was important and necessary? Because certainly this was going to be something that was going to take a lot of time and bandwidth.
Right. Honestly, no. The leadership was who was pushing for us to bring it all into one database. And so we had a lot of support from our leadership and a little bit of pressure. The timeline was a little tighter than we had a few consultants say, oh, this should take, 2 years. This should take 3 years. And our leadership at the time, it was, well, let's get this done in 18 months. We're like, okay. But honestly, our team, came together and we worked essentially night and day. And some of our markets were overlapping. Some of them were smaller than some, some of them were bigger. So we were able to make it work within that time frame. And, it the leadership support helped because the two of, in full disclosure. So Denise from your team was my partner in this merger. She's wonderful, and she and I were able to essentially work night and day on just that. So it was, helpful that we didn't have a full-time job, and then this was kind of a side thing. Like, can you, continue to do this job, and also can you just merge all the databases into one? It was not like that. So that support helped a lot because we were able to fully um, work on just that piece. So, and the markets were wonderful. We worked closely with each of the markets to make sure that they, like I said, had a seamless transition into the new database and didn't lose functionality from one to the next. Um, so kudos to them. That was a hard transition for everyone. So
I'm sure. Nicole, so same question. Did you have to sort of sell this to your leadership? Because obviously it was going to take time and people and
Yeah, I
chaos.
mean, I think it was I'm thinking back through all of my experiences, healthcare, higher education, now religion. I think the case is really kind of easily made when you're in the advancement office. You can point to the size, the scope, like what you need, what direction you want to go in, how you think that this will better serve your constituents. So no, there really was not much pushback from leadership in any of my experiences. It's more about, setting the budget, comparing the previous systems and really setting that timeline. And that was probably the most important piece because I'm sure in most cases, leadership, wants things done as fast as possible. But these are not light tasks. This is very heavy lifting, and I think 18 months is kind of the bare minimum that you need for,
It is.
a system conversion and implementation. And you're going to be doing continuous cleanup and improvement on that system for, more time than that 18 months as well. So that's really the most important thing I think to communicate to everybody in the organization is the time that it will take.
Mhm.
Steph, for organizations where, the advancement office knows this is the right thing, but maybe senior leadership is not so convinced. From your point of view, what kinds of things can the advancement office point to that are strong reasons to do this? What problems will it solve?
Yeah, I think there's kind of two parts to this question, and I think the first one is like putting in the effort to get your data cleaned up, even if you're not getting to a migration yet. I think the just kind of getting things cleaned up, I think the best way to point to it is you ask me, these are the reports you're asking for, and these are the 12 different workarounds we have in place currently to get to that data because it has, because historically the coding has changed, or because, we weren't set up originally, or the way the organization runs now and the service lines and the focuses now are different than they were 10 years ago. And so I think that's a big part of it. One of the first things we try to do when we come in with new organizations is if you could, wave a magic wand tomorrow, what's the one report that you would be able to pull easily, have at your kind of fingertips? And then Marlisa knows this because I'm like, Marlisa, can you make a dashboard that looks just like this? And so, we start there, and then that's very quickly we can say, okay, here's what it looks like. This is how it is with your data currently right now. Now if you put in the effort to, cleaning up your action coding and getting those, systemized, then your, fundraiser reports are going to be a lot cleaner, and then kind of work your way backwards from end goal. This is what we need to get to that point. And then I think that kind of magic word of like, you want more visibility and insights, real-time data is that's kind of what they're all asking for. And so we can, but we need to put in the effort to clean it all up and get there. And then if it's, I think from there, if it's a conversion question, it's really kind of like I said before, what are the key functionality? We would love to do this, but we literally cannot do it in our current system. And this is what, we recommend next. And this is, why the investment is going to be worth it, in 6 months, in a year, in 3 years. So some of it we try to talk through too is if we were to switch today, what are some of those really quick wins we can get so that this team sees the momentum, even though we know behind the scenes, we all know it's going to take probably 2 years to get the data there. Is there something really quick we can push out and focus on so that they see, something new and that's working really well to get the buy-in for the rest of the 18-month wait.
It could be something as easy as online gifts, right? Like that
Yes.
was one of the things for us that the old
Yeah.
systems were not great in
Mhm.
for the site that people had to go to make an online gift.
Yeah.
Now with the Blackbaud tools that we have, that was one of the easy, quick things that we were able to turn on right
Yep.
away. It was a new online donation form, a better experience for the donors, a better way for
Yeah,
us
no,
to
that's a great
process those
example.
gifts.
And it looks like, it's kind of like, hey, look, it looks like you would expect a form in 2026 to look, right?
Right,
Like,
right.
like this is what they're seeing when they go to Amazon. This is what they're seeing when they go to, make a donation at, a large organization. When they come to ours, it looks like it hasn't been updated in 10 years because it probably hasn't, depending on what you're coming from. So things like that. And I think even the like quick e-receipting, even things like that, or some really easy lift, kind of new donor workflows, even if it's just a second follow-up email, any of that kind of stuff that you can say, these are the things that are going to impact the donor right away and make it a better donor experience. And also to our executive leadership, these are the kind of insights you're going to get, quickly. Those tend to be the two biggest selling points, I think. We all know what it is behind the scenes that's going to make life a lot easier, but to the people who, aren't living day to day in the data, those are the pieces that tend to matter.
You talk about things looking like they should in 2026. I was talking to someone yesterday who they're about to do a migration and they're migrating from a DOS system.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
No.
I mean, Nicole, no offense, you guys weren't a whole lot better than.
I know.
Yeah.
And Nicole, you were in basically the CRM you guys were in for some of it was direct mail focused, not donor CRM focused, right? So that's a big
Correct.
part of
Yeah,
it.
correct. Hmm. But yeah,
Um,
it looked ancient. It definitely had that look and feel of a dinosaur for sure.
we have a great question from the audience, and I'll let anyone chime in, any and all who want to. So when you're using list management, did you just demote the records and leave them without further appeals, or do you promote the records each month or quarter to send them some kind of an appeal solicitation?
Neither. You can add the appeals while they're still list management records, non-constituents.
Yep. Yes, because my acquisition people, that's the model that we use. We use like name exchanges and list exchanges. So you are only allowed to mail to that list one time. If they become
Okay.
a donor, then they're ours and we can continue to mail them. So I don't have that problem where I have to do that. But yes, to Steph's point, like if I wanted to say grab some of those people that haven't given in more than 10 years and start to send them fresh stuff, I could simply just like import the appeal code and all of the appeal information onto those non-constituent records in list management.
Denise, have you done anything around that, mailing to people?
We have not used list management for acquisition at this point, but I love the idea for the future. At this point, we really demoted deceased individuals, anyone who didn't have giving or assignments to solicitors and things like that. So it was just kind of like the bare bones people we had data on, but we didn't necessarily need in the database anymore. Um, but I love the acquisition idea.
I would say actually the list management import for adding appeals is better than the way you can do it
Yep.
otherwise. And so I usually do that for adding all of my assigned
Yep.
appeals to my hundred thousands of records
And
at
we're
a
going to
time.
get
Wow.
way in the weeds right now, but you can also add it and it can do to both. Like you can pull a list of people that are either full constituents or in list management and manage them all at the same time.
Yeah.
Nicole, for reference, because I think I know the answer, but when you send your direct mail pieces out, whether it's your acquisition or just one of your your biggest mailing of the year, I mean, it's hundreds
It's
of
hundreds,
thousands.
yeah. Christmas
Yeah.
goes out to about 150,000 people. And we have a magazine that goes out twice a year to 100,000 people each time.
I thought we were talking hundreds of thousands. I'm
Yeah.
just thinking back to helping you get your historical appeals added in, and it was hundreds of thousands.
Yes,
of
yeah,
lines.
that's true.
Great. Yeah, so it sounds like actually the Omatic tool, yeah, it's more than just the parking lot that you can actually actively manipulate those records without having to bring them back into the database.
Yes.
So very nice. So once you went through the combining your databases, Denise, I'll ask you this first. Like when it was all said and done, and you're all kind of looking at each other blinking. And did that really happen? But how did you decide, like what was next? Was there anything you needed to do once everything was brought together? And how was that decided, what the next steps would be?
Well, the next steps for me was I went on a 2-week vacation.
Good.
Knowing when I came back, all of the data optimization would be waiting for me. So I mean, really, that's what we jumped into. We really just did an analysis of all the things that we wanted to make sure were either made efficient or consistent or, whatever, cleaned up, whatever it needed to be. And we jumped in and we decided, opportunities and actions were our first go round, and got in there, made sure, and actually started working with DDX. And at that point, that was um, what we needed to, analyze the data and find out best practices and essentially coming up with the right way to do it that would work for all of our markets. And opportunities and actions took quite a long time because everybody was doing that differently, in the old databases. And leadership had ideas of, this is the way that we want to have our prospect management team work with our solicitors. And so, we cleaned up the data and made it work for everybody all in one fell swoop. Then we jumped into things like constituent codes and duplicates and um, code table cleanup, that kind of thing. Um, so yeah, I mean, and it's still going on. I mean, years later, we're still working on different projects that, maybe fell a little lower on our list of things to do. So.
And yeah, Nicole, same question. What was next after the databases were combined?
Yeah, so we, focus on core functionality for us, which was heavy in the gift processing. So we made sure that we had hands-on training for the whole team. We set up, the standards in terms of like which fields are required, at what is everything that needs to be filled in on a constituent record to start a record. We, came up with the standard reports that we were going to use every month, and how to run all of those. Um, like Denise, we did the cleanup after implementation. So we then had to go down that road of the duplicates and cleaning up all of those records. I will say that was probably the most challenging part because of the mail operation here, because I was still having to
Yeah.
produce mailing lists for ongoing pieces of mail that had been scheduled out. And now we were in a combined system and I had to like dedupe in real time for mailing lists for that kind of first year. So that is something to be cautious of. But now that we have deduped, those list pulls are much easier. And we have more complete picture of information on each constituent record.
And
Mhm.
so, Steph, when someone is approaching this process,
Yeah.
because now we've heard that with both Denise and Nicole, the decision was made not to clean up before merging, but instead to do it afterwards. I'm sure there's pros and cons of doing either. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think it depends on the organization. It depends on if you are, what you're migrating from or to. Are you bringing, in the end, is the goal to have all of the data in the new database, or is it to have, only some of it, or what does that look like? And I think the other big part of it too is, you know, how much data are you combining? I think if you're talking duplicates and you're getting them all into the same database, I and this is a me personal, so I don't know if this is an official DDX stance on it. So feel free to correct me here if you have other thoughts, Marlisa. But personally, I think I would almost always rather see it in the new system together so that you at least are looking at the data all the same before you decide how to clean it up, how to merge duplicates, things like that. Part of that is, if you try to clean it up in the spreadsheet, you pull it out of one system and try to clean up in the spreadsheet and then move it in. Now you got to backtrack it a little bit and figure out where a change made. Whereas at least if you get everything into one system and then decide what to do there, you're looking at it with the same lens all the way around. I think they're both of your cases, you had Omatic, so obviously you're going to handle the duplicates in there that way because it does a great job of that. And then I think you just, you kind of have the history you need to separate records later on or to go back to what it originally was,
Mhm.
and things like that. So that's my kind of gut reaction is to put it all together, map it correctly, and then especially if you're coming from different systems to begin with, and put it all in together and then say, okay, now that we're talking about appeals all in the same language of appeal, now that we're talking about solicitations, or interactions are all now actions, and then kind of looking at it holistically that way seems to work better and leave less room for misinterpretation or kind of, lost data along the way.
I could see lost data being a big risk if you clean everything out ahead of time.
Mhm.
Yeah,
It
for
is nice to look at it all under the same umbrella and see,
Yeah.
and potentially then there's opportunities for, mass updates or easier cleanup that way too.
Mhm.
If you find a whole set of, for us it was titles. Titles were a big
Uh-huh.
mess, the title field. So, in our old system, there was a selection that was a combined Mr. and Mrs. title. Well, that doesn't work, for the functionality of Razor's Edge and the way that we wanted to set up our addresses and our
Yeah.
salutations. So, that was one of the things that we identified early on that we needed to clean up right
I
away.
think that's a great point though, because otherwise you're going to have to add, you've got your data out from one field and you're going to have to try to translate it on your spreadsheet and then put it into the new one. And then, at what point did it change? Whereas if you get it all in and then you can tackle, say, nope, I don't know, every Mr. all capitalized is actually the same as MR period, then you can
Yeah.
kind of global change stuff in there a lot easier. So.
Once everything was in, at that point, did you find any surprises or things like that? Once as you're looking at all this data together, I mean, Denise was bringing together 12 databases that were not cleaned up, bringing them all together. At that point, was there anything where you thought, "Oh my goodness, how did we get by on this for so long?"
Honestly, feel like there was a lot of things like that. But I mean, I think, some of the gift coding things come to mind, like our appeals. Like we had so many appeals and didn't realize, you know, if we knew at the time, when we were finished, if we had known that prior, we probably would have hit a few different things prior to conversion. Appeals would have been one of them, making them a little more consistent, giving them a naming convention, that kind of thing, because that was quite the undertaking after the fact. Um, but I feel like, there are things like you said, having them in the same system makes a huge difference being able to see it all in one place. So I feel like there's some things I would have done prior, some things I would have done after. But yeah, I think that it was probably the fund appeals campaign, that kind of stuff that I wish, that was surprising. Like, oh, this does not look great after the fact. And the duplicates, there was just too many of those.
Nicole, how about for you?
Yeah, for us, it was really just keeping a fine eye on like historical giving and tributes and soft credits, like anything that has the potential to be counted twice. So and they're when they're coming from other systems, like they just what what was an actual tribute showed up as two gifts, one from the person who was being honored or memorialized and one from the actual donor. So that was surprising. You just have to really keep an eye on the things that you're going to want to report on. You need to have your numbers be accurate, so it's just important to watch for some of those things.
Absolutely.
And actually, I haven't asked the big question. And so, Nicole, I'll start with you on this one. How did it go when you were actually in the midst of that process? How did the migration, merging, how'd it go?
Yeah, all in all, I mean, I think it went well. I think, it was great to have some hand holding by DDX. We had regular weekly meetings and check-ins and homework assignments. So, it was great to stay on track that way. It definitely can feel like a slog while you're in it, but you know, eventually, yes, you come out of it and you can look back on everything that you've accomplished and how clean your lists are and your reports are.
And how about for you, Denise? How did that whole process, how'd it go?
I mean, I think it went fairly well for probably the lack of experience we had prior. We kind of jumped in with both feet and, just did what we needed to do. We did have some help from consultants. It wasn't DDX yet. That was not until after. But for the most part, we just kind of learned along the way. And, there was some pitfalls. We realized that some of our databases didn't have gift IDs, and they really needed to have gift IDs if you're going to connect things afterwards. So, some things like that, we wish we would have known prior. But thankfully, we were doing them in stages, with the 12, and so we were able to kind of like go back and then go forward again.
Mhm.
And so, it's such a simple concept to, oh, you should have this, but sometimes you just don't know what you don't know,
Mhm.
honestly. And but I think when I look back, I don't have nightmares or, trepidation about going forward to doing something else. We actually just last fall had two more databases that we had to merge into our database, and those, with the help of DDX, did go very well. And so we'll continue to do that as we need to. So no worries.
And so, Denise, if you could go back in time to yourself at the very beginning of this process, what advice would you give yourself? Things you wish you had done, things you wish you had avoided. I know you mentioned the gift IDs, this kind
Right.
of thing.
Well, there were a few things that as I was thinking about today, things like making sure that we put prefixes on everything. So, when you have 12 markets and you have IDs, we put them into alias so that we could connect, as we brought new ones in. The first market, we didn't put the prefix on the alias. And that came back to bite us in the second one because you can have the same ID in two different
Oh yeah.
databases. And so we learned fairly quickly to put like that prefix onto everything going forward. So that's a huge one. The gift ID thing, we wish we would have known prior. This one not necessarily for the 12, but when we did the two last year, um, I very quickly learned that when you're coming from a different type of database, because so one of them was from Blackbot CRM into Razor's Edge. And I have no experience with Blackbot CRM, nor were we able to actually get in there and see how the data lived within the database. So that one was, we essentially sent over, here's the tables or the exports of the data that we want, and they pulled the data for us, and then we had to figure out how to get it into Razor's Edge. So, knowing the database that you're coming from and knowing, having good knowledge of the one that you're bringing it into, that's definitely helpful. So, um,
Hmm.
yeah. Did I answer the question? I feel like I just rambled.
No, that was excellent. It was excellent. And Nicole, how about you? If you could go back and talk to your former self at the beginning of this process.
Yeah, it's a process. What would I have done? I don't know. I'm just going back to, the time. You have to plan for the amount of time that it's going to take to implement. You have to think of it as a living, breathing, ongoing thing, that this is never just done. Like, you have to continually um, review your audit queries and your ongoing maintenance things that you need to do. Plus, there's going to be, system changes, things that come straight out of the product that you're going to have to continually update and learn or shift processes to. So, I think that's really just the advice, is to just be patient, take some time, realize that things are going to take time, but set the plan out and it'll be good in the end.
And Steph, so when if you were working with a client who's about to start this process in the very beginning,
Mhm.
what things do you tell them to prepare and maybe concrete things, but also maybe mindset things.
Yeah. I think it is setting fair expectations, both internally and to other stakeholders in the project. I think we internally too also go, we can get through this quicker. Like, yes, of course we can, but leaving room for those weird things that come up. And, I'll go back to my original, all right, we've got them all. Oh, just kidding. We found solicit codes hiding somewhere totally different. Let's make sure we capture them in the right space place too. And just knowing that it's going to be a work in progress for a while. I think one of the big pieces for me, just have gone having gone through these a few times, is pick a date and have that be your cutover date. And if you need to do another kind of final sweep of all of your data afterwards, that's fine too. But what gets really tricky is if you try to maintain two active systems at the same time. That is just room for, confusion and kind of room for disaster. So sometimes we'll say, okay, let's pick, what's your fiscal year? Great. Let's do all of the gifts up to and the people up to and everything, up to June 30th. And then let's work through, maybe takes a couple weeks, a month to actually get the data moved in, test it out, look good. Great. Now let's go grab any of the new changes since then. Whereas some people say, well, let's just maintain the changes in both databases. That is setting yourself up for failure. Especially unless, then it's okay. Is the new system the one we should trust? Is the old system the one we should trust? Things like that. So, kind of have an understanding and communicate it out really well to the whole team too. And it's, at this date, we're going to lock the old system. It's going to be there for reference just in case we need to go back and double check if we missed something or how it was before. But on this date, forward only, all changes go, in the new system or something like that. So, and even if it's just a data conversion, again, sometimes you pick all right, going forward, this is how we want the data to work, and we'll start working our way backwards on cleaning up the old data. And let's go back 3 years, let's go back 5 years, 10, forever, whatever makes sense to the organization too. As long as people have a clear understanding of when the data changed, I think is the most important part. So,
So I'm going to ask everyone for their final thoughts, but also to our audience, if you have any final questions, please
yeah.
pop those in the Q&A. But Denise, what things, if someone came to you and said, we're about to go through this process, what would be the one thing you'd want to tell them?
Well, I thought long and hard about this one. But I think the one of the main things that helped get us through, especially with having so many different databases, was having a tracking system for
Mm,
that data. We use Smartsheet. You could use Excel. You could use, I'm sure there's numerous, software programs that could be used for this, but really it helped us to take all of our exports, have a list of all the things that we're doing, making sure that we could track things like who might be working on that file or mark, which one needs cleanup of some kind or, keeping track of the number of records, things, we could make notes on those particular files, that kind of thing. And then ultimately marking that it was completed. And it just really allowed us to track that data to make sure that nothing fell through the cracks.
Great.
you guys were very
And
organized.
I think you just have to be, honestly.
Right.
And Nicole, how about you?
I would think about, what it is you're trying to solve. We want these systems to help us better serve our donors and our missions. So we don't want them to, make our lives worse or more challenging. So um, just to I guess, yeah, think about, are you trying to improve a process or is there just core functionality that you're missing that, like you said, do we need to bring ourselves up into 2026? So do we want to get connected with other systems? That's, so I've worked in places where I've used Omatic to connect with the financial system and do,
Yep.
GL posting and things like that. So whatever these issues that someone is having at their own organization, consider whether or not moving to that system is going to make those problems better, or if it's going to make, solve some of those problems, or if there's something that you can be doing, without having to completely migrate to something else. Is there something that you should look at more closely within your own systems first? Because it is a heavy lift. I think it works out well. Usually, I've always gone from something old to something newer and better. So it always works out in the end, but it is a heavy lift. So just be prepared for what you're getting into.
And Steph, what would be your final thought on what people should?
Yeah, I think the one piece that I was just thinking through that we haven't kind of come back and kind of circled back on is what do you do once all the data's in there to make sure it doesn't get messy again? And so for us, like one of the first things we do is start setting up we'll start setting up some audit queries, some checks, some dashboards and things like that. So one, is the data as accurate as it was before? Hopefully more so. But then as people start getting their hands into the data again in the new system or in the new, structure, how do we make sure it continues to stay clean? And it doesn't, revert right back to where you were, a year ago or anything like that. So
Right.
have some of those data health checks in place too.
We do have a last question from the audience, and Steph, this will be one for you. What is the most successful CRM that you have migrated people away from Razor's Edge NXT?
I'm going to give a big non-answer on that one, and I think it is wholly dependent on the organization. That is a hard question to answer. I think it depends on the size of the organization. It depends on how much internal IT support you have and, coding. I think there's a lot of different options out there. In full transparency, we usually come in after people migrate to or from one and either want help with the migration or they've done the migration and they're like, now what do we do? How do we get this data working well? But I think there are a lot of different options out there, but it is completely dependent on the organization. Mostly size and also, what are the priorities of the organization. So
It's a good answer, Steph.
that's my non-answer to that one. Sorry.
I've sat in other professional groups that have touched on that, and some of the smaller nonprofits, like
Yeah.
real small grassroots nonprofits, do see success with, I've heard little green light thrown out a lot out there, or
We see
other
a
like
lot that go. We've worked with a lot of organizations. The ones that are most common for us, if they are, especially if they are smaller, not small, but not
Mhm.
huge either. We have a lot that go to and from Donor Perfect and Bloomerang to Razor's Edge. So we've handled migrations both ways for those. There are pros and cons to each of them, just like there are pros and cons to Razor's Edge. I mean, I think, elephant in the room, that is the big one. It's a reason that a lot of people use them. And on the flip side, there are reasons why people don't use Razor's Edge. But I think it depends. I think we've got a couple clients that have moved to Salesforce Cloud or one version of that. And we have a couple that are on Virtuous now. And so I think sitting in this role has been really interesting in seeing the good and bad on both sides and the whole bunch of different ways that people use different software. So there's my continued non-answer. That being said, if you want to reach out to us and like with specific questions, like we always happy to have that conversation too on kind of what our experiences have been specific to what like an organization needs. But yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for giving of your time, and thank you everyone for joining us. Our next webinar will be on July 21st. This one is Spring Cleaning, Data Detox for Maximum Efficiency. So be sure to join us for that and have a wonderful day. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Marlisa.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
joining us.
Bye.